Hello and welcome to my channel In Search of Wonder. My name is Anne and today I have my July recap. Welcome to my July recap. This is normally my weekly reading wrap up, but it's worked out really well for me at the end of the month, beginning of the next month to do the recap in this spot because I do like to kind of tie up the month just for my own self, and if anybody else is interested, to see how I did with my reading challenges, with my TBR, how successful was I or was I not, etc. So this is going to be my July recap. Of course, July ends in the middle of the week, this week, which is the day that I'm filming it actually. So the next few days that are the rest of this week that are the month of August, I will bump to next week's weekly wrap up. So it'll be a week and a half wrap up. I do want to mention before I get back to July that for August, I came across Chloe at Always Booked. She and another channel are hosting a deck of TBRathon game and challenge, which is so fun and was easy for me for the most part so far to superimpose on top of my August reading plans, which were kind of a mess anyway. So that's been fun. I will link the channels below. I'm not sure if it's too late to join in on the fun or if you can just participate at any point throughout the month, but I'm going to be doing that. So how the game works is that you pull a card from a deck of cards and they have prompts for each of the numbers and for like the king and queen, etc. And then they have 3 levels and each level is a different amount of points. So you can earn 1 point or 3 points or 5 points. And it's a team-based game. So I am on the red team or the TBR team, and you choose a book with however many points, and then you read that book, and once you have finished it, you add it on the log for your team, and then the winning team has read the most books with the most points. So the very first book that I drew, I can't remember what number I drew of the card, but the prompt was about the covers, things that were on the cover, objects on the cover. And so it worked out perfectly because one of the prompts for Chantel's Read Your Shelf Challenge for August is to have a house on the cover. And as Dia pointed out for me in my last video, when I was trying to find a book with a house on the cover, there was a book on my TBR that genuinely had a house on the cover, and that is Jane Austen's First Love, which was on my tentative TBR for Jane Austen July, and I didn't get to it, so I'm happy to bump that to August, and that will be the read that I start on August 1st, which will be tomorrow for me as I'm filming this. So this will be my first read for that deck of TBRathon, but I'm hoping that I can mostly fit my August or other TBR books into that. Similarly to the Catch-Up-a-thon is going to be books that I own that I have been intending to read, etc. So that's looking forward into August. Now let's take a look back at July. First of all, I am so grateful for this week that we have had, this last half week of July, because unexpectedly my boys had an opportunity to go to camp again, away camp, and this time a camp that they have been to before that they really loved, and they were kind of sad about not being able to go to this year. And so they're both gone this week, unexpectedly, totally cleared my plate and my husband's plate. So first of all, we planned in a couple date outings for the week. So yesterday we went to Charlestown, West Virginia. If you watched my 50 states video, you might have heard me say that I live within spitting distance of West Virginia. Actually, I live within spitting distance of 2 different states besides my own, and an easy drive to a couple other states. So we went into West Virginia, to Charlestown, West Virginia, which is mostly famous for gambling, but I've never been to the casino there. I have, however, been to the small downtown area, which is really cute, and they have a fantastic bookstore there, plus a couple great coffee shops. And so we went to a new coffee shop, which was fantastic. I had some really great coffee. And then we went to the bookstore, which is called like the Fuzzy Dog Bookstore or something like that. I actually bought nothing because your girl is cleaning out her books and she doesn't want to be filling it in with stuff that she's going to feel guilty about not reading for the next 5 years. But there was one room in this bookstore that I had never been in, apparently, when I had been in the bookstore before, that was so amazing, or maybe it was new, I don't know. It had all of their vintage books and like vintage history books and that sort of thing. And it was such a beautiful room. Murals on all of the walls with scenes, local historic scenes, or it kind of evoked the local scenery, I guess. And these low shelves filled with vintage books And there was a fireplace there. I would just love to sit in that room and read those books if I had the time to do that. So then we walked around the main street a little while also, and we went to this fantastic little shop, not a little shop, but it was like a kind of like one of those markets where like there are different vendors. So it's a variety of products available. Some of them are handmade and handcrafted. Some of them are refurbished or revitalized. Some of them are antique, that sort of thing. And so I found some really fantastic stuff that I wanted to show you. First of all, these earrings, which you can't tell because you can't see my shorts, but they don't match at all what I'm wearing today, but I just wanted to wear them. I got those earrings. They're only $4, which I felt honestly a little bit guilty paying so little for something, but, and then I got some tea. So this is called Razzle Dazzle. I've been wanting to get a really yummy iced tea for the summer. I have like, you know, the Lipton's Basic Black tea for iced tea. And I have a blend that I got at the Orchard House in Concord, Massachusetts, which is nice, but it is a green tea based one, which isn't my favorite. So I enjoy it, but it's not like my favorite. So I was looking for something like this that I can make some yummy iced tea for myself. Oh, I've also been adding fresh mint leaves to my black tea when I make iced tea, but this one I'm so excited to try. Listen to the ingredients. Raspberry leaf, lemongrass, spearmint, peppermint, hibiscus, rose hips, cinnamon, and orange peel. I love like the cinnamon thrown in there with all of that. Doesn't that sound so delicious? I haven't tried it yet, but I'm definitely going to make myself some of that today, and I think it will be fantastic as an iced tea. For my book journaling, I found these little paper packets, like these little ephemera things, where it has like, there's like a vintage picture there, and then there's just these little bits of like lace and paper things and like little black dot sort of things. Anyway, I thought that would be really fun to use in my reading journal. I don't really do any other kind of journaling on a regular basis that I would use this kind of stuff for, but in my book journal, it'll be really fun. This one is a beach themed one, which would be, I wish that I'd had it for the beaches and books, but maybe if I don't use it this summer, I can use it next summer. And there's even like sand in there and shells, which I wouldn't really put in a journal per se, but I love the beach themed stickers and paper pieces. We have spent almost 10 minutes talking about nothing about July and books related. So let's get to that and let's try to make this snappy. I was also very grateful for this past week that we have had with my boys being gone. It was an opportunity to kind of like just relax and regroup for myself, because the days I have been at home by myself with very little on my calendar, and it's been wonderful, and it's been a blessing because I have been able to catch up on all of my reading life for the month of July. Otherwise, July for me would have totally just tanked reading wise. So I was able, last week I caught up on a lot of books, like I finished up books that I had already started. I just needed to finish. And then this week I was able to start and finish a couple books, plus finish the big one. So let's talk about first what I managed to finish up this week. And that kind of made me feel a little bit better about my July TBR and my accomplishments with that. First of all is Flower Fables by Louisa May Alcott. And this one is just a short book, a thin little book that Louisa May Alcott wrote when she was a little bit younger, on the younger side, like a young adult, I think. And she wrote it for the Emerson children, Waldo Emerson's children, who she, I'm not sure if she was ever like in a teaching capacity to them, but definitely like sort of a babysitter and an older friend to them. And I believe that they were lifelong friends. So she wrote this for them as stories to tell them. And it's set in the fairy kingdom. There's some interaction with humans. And it was really just charming and delightful. Definitely very moralistic, which is sometimes for me when it comes to Victorian era literature, 19th century literature, is a little bit much for me. But in this case, because they were fables, it was really easy to take. And it was kind of like, you know, in the Mary Poppins movie, the song that she sings, "A spoonful of sugar helps medicine go down." It was just really delightfully packaged. So I enjoyed it in this context. The first couple of fables, I was like, okay, this is going to be, you know, the idea of all these stories seems to be that as long as you love everybody perfectly, then they will behave perfectly, which I feel like is a really damaging and harmful philosophy because it puts a lot of responsibility on yourself for someone else's behavior, and it can really lead to enabling and that sort of thing. And so I feel like that's a damaging message to give to children, that if only they can love someone perfectly, then that person will behave perfectly, and it's just not true. So thankfully, it didn't continue in that vein. There definitely was a strong message of love and how it can change people, which is certainly true. But there were a couple of fables that were actually kind of lengthy and had also a bit of a fairy tale aspect to them, in that the characters had to go on quests and they had to prove themselves by doing various things. So there were a couple where actually this elf guy was a horrible person, well, a horrible elf, and he was very mean and everything. And so he even ended up in like an elf version of prison, which did not completely reform him, which I also thought was a good message. In the end, what changed him was, first of all, repentance, and secondly, proving the change in his life by accomplishing a series of tasks that were given to him that kind of like reversed the damage that he had done in the past. So it was really actually surprisingly deep, and I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. It's not normally the sort of thing that I would read like for pleasure, but for interest's sake, I enjoyed it. And I really think that a little girl who's in the fairy phase, like who's making fairy gardens and that kind of stuff, and really into fairies, would probably enjoy these stories. And it would be a nice read aloud as well. And then I finished How to Taste Coffee by Jessica Easto. And this is a nonfiction book that I just picked up from the library because it looked interesting to me. It was a lot more scientific than I expected. So the author delves really deep into the science of taste, which is a very complex science. So I was blown away by the complexity of everything that goes into how we taste and what we perceive as flavor. That actually is a combination of actual taste with your taste buds, but also your sense of smell gets involved, and your sense of touch. And so she goes into deep detail about the scientific discoveries that have been made in that area. And then also you realize how much we don't know about even the most basic things we experience as humans, and the biology that goes into it, the chemistry that goes into it. When it gets really detailed into like chemistry and physiology and stuff, I just, my eyes glaze over and my brain tunes out, and I don't love it. But at the same time, I was blown away. I was thinking to myself, wow, what an amazing creator we have who gave us these minutely detailed capabilities that we can't even fully discover or comprehend or understand yet with all of our technological advancements. And how we can taste 1,000 different compounds in coffee alone. And our brain can sort them and analyze them and categorize them and come to conclusions about them. All of these minutely detailed little compounds that are present in coffee and other things. So it was more scientific than I expected. I also was wanting a little bit more discussion for myself, is what I wanted to get out of the book, but that's not what the book is about. I wanted more about like different types of beans. She talks very briefly, touches on it lightly, but different types of beans and where they're grown and how that leads to certain types of flavors. That wasn't really what she was about. I also wanted to learn more about different types of roasts and how that lends itself to different flavors. She touches on that. But the main purpose of this book is literally, as the title says, how to taste coffee. So it's not about how coffee becomes what it is or what you might expect from a French roast versus an Italian roast or whatever. For example, she talks a little bit about the difference between dark, medium, and light roasts and the different inherent qualities of the coffee that those roasts bring out. But she doesn't really go into, like, if I go to a coffee shop and it says that this coffee is from a certain place in the world and it's roasted this certain way, what am I going to expect from that? So I want to read some more books that have that, because now my interest is even more piqued. But this was very good at helping you develop a vocabulary for the things that you taste in coffee, and also helping you to be more specific and aware of the coffee that you're tasting, and to drink it more consciously and interacting with it on a more intellectual level. So I really appreciated that. She did have a lot of like actual practical analytical exercises to go through in order to develop your tasting, which I haven't really done because I didn't have a lot of the ingredients that she was talking about. Like you need like citric acid, and the only one of the ingredients that she mentioned that I had was Epsom salts. but you had to do that in combination with other things, and I'm just not about to go to the store. It's not that important to me, but I did learn a lot from this book. And also she gives instructions, detailed instructions on how to set up a tasting party or like a cupping party at your house with yourself or friends. And so I really would love to do that with my sisters. I think it would be fun. So overall, I enjoyed this book and I gave it 5 stars. 4 stars. And ladies and gentlemen, I finally finished Les Miserables! Woohoo! Cue the confetti. So I have been working on this since April, I believe, and just reading it slowly, not because I wasn't enjoying it, it's just really deep and sometimes very heavy, requires more thinking. So I cannot just read through it quickly. I have in the past read through it pretty quickly, but I think that I was just reading pretty shallowly because I really needed a lot more time to read it. I think I was just reading a little more closely and carefully this time. And I'm glad that I did because it gave me a fresh perspective on this story that I had never had before. But I'm going to save that for a longer, more detailed video because I don't want to spend too much time on it in this one. I would just say initially, well, I would say like from 50 to 90% of this book, I was thinking, you know what, I might downgrade this. It was always a 5-star book for me, but I might downgrade this to 4 stars because I'm just not loving it like I used to. But by the time I got to the end, that last book in the last volume, it's just so beautifully written and it's so powerful, but it wouldn't be what it is without everything that came before it. So it really just solidly ties everything up and clinches everything. And I loved it so much. And I was crying at the end, gave me tears, and it renewed my love for this story and gave me a fresh appreciation for it. The other thing I want to say is this may have been a different translation from the ones I have read previously. I know one of the versions I read previously was abridged, so it was definitely a different translator. And I think that may have made the difference in my level of enjoyment. I think I may have preferred the translations I had read before, but at this point, I don't know for sure what those translations were, and I have no way of finding it out because I don't even remember what the editions looked like that I read because memory is gone. But I think it may have been an issue with the translation. I really want to try a more recent translation. I forget the name of the translator, but it's been within the past 10 years, I want to say, that is highly acclaimed and many people say is the best translation of Les Mis to date. So I really want to read that one. The next time I tackle Les Mis, it's going to be with that translation. Then I just picked up and finally started I Must Betray You, which was the June book for the Protagonist Pups book club. And I want to read all the Ruta Sepetys, so it was on my TBR to read anyway, but I didn't have a copy. I had to get it from the library. There was a delay with that. And plus I had other books on my plate. Finally, I started this one. If I have to return it to the library before I finish it, I also had requested it from Libby. So that just came in like yesterday. So now I have the digital. So if I don't finish this before the library starts sending me emails about it, I will finish up with the digital. So that is everything that I read in July. So how does that compare with what I actually planned to read in July? Well, let me see. Let me consult my July TBR notes. So first of all, I am supposed to read Fahrenheit 451 for the Tea and Ink Society Read Your Classics Challenge that I am doing this year. And well, I didn't do that. So that's getting pushed to August because this would be the first month that I did not finish in that challenge. So I definitely want to finish all of the prompts in that challenge and complete that one. So I'm pushing that to August and I will read it. I just didn't get to it in July. I skipped on the other book club that I'm in that was reading Around the World in 80 Days. I just didn't have time to finish it. They already had the discussion for it. And so I'm just moving on. I'm taking that off my TBR. For Jane Austen July, I was a lot more successful. I did not join in reading a main Jane Austen novel because I had recently already read Mansfield Park and I didn't want to read another one again so soon. So I didn't join in with that prompt. I wasn't intending to anyway. The next prompt was to read one of her other works. So not her main novels, but something else. And I read Sanditon for that. I really enjoyed that. It's funny because Courtney at Courtney Reads was saying that she read the Watsons and Sanditon this past month, and she preferred the Watsons to Sanditon. I read the Watsons earlier this year, and I read Sanditon for Jane Austen in July, and I preferred Sanditon. I felt like the characters were a little bit more defined better. Like, I don't know, they just were more well-defined characters. Like, I I could get to know them a little bit better. And I felt like there was more of Jane Austen's trademark wit in there. Definitely the Watsons had that wit in it as well. But it just, I don't know, Sanditon just seemed a little bit more sparkling to me. There were a lot of characters. There were a lot of characters thrown at you in the beginning, and it wasn't as obvious, because I think she maybe didn't get quite as far. It wasn't as obvious where Austen was going with the story as it was in the Watsons. You had a better idea of where things are going to end up. But I did enjoy Sanditon. And then Jane Austen at home was what I read for the next prompt, which was to read a nonfiction book about Austen or her time or whatever. And I gave a detailed review of my thoughts about that book, but I read that for nonfiction. And then for a book written by a contemporary of Austen, I read Frankenstein, because Mary Shelley would have been a contemporary of Austen. And I really enjoyed that. And again, I spoke at length about my thoughts about that book in a recent wrap-up, so you can watch that if you're interested and you haven't watched it yet. And then here's where I failed, because the prompts were to read a book set, either a retelling of one of Austen's stories or like a Regency era book or whatever. And I had several options that I didn't read any of them. What I did end up reading was just because it was on Kindle Unlimited, and I felt like I needed to read something on Kindle Unlimited because I have like one of those free months right now, but then it's going to start to pay. And I was like, well, I need to take advantage of this. And I'm also trying to decide if I actually want to keep my Kindle Unlimited or not. So anyway, I read The Earl Next Door by Ashton Newbold, which is a Regency era setting, and it was fine. It was one of those stories. So it was, you know, like a Regency romance kind of thing, a light, fluffy story. It was a clean read. It was pretty well written as that sort of stuff goes. But it was one of those situations where the two characters who are falling in love with each other both are determined to marry different people for reasons. And at the same time, they are allowing themselves to be put into situations and making choices knowingly that pave the way for them to get closer and closer to each other instead of to the people that they are thinking that they will marry instead, or that they need to marry, etc. So I didn't love that, but at the same time, the author was definitely not portraying that as wise on their part. Like, the characters knew they shouldn't be doing this, and they knew that they were being, you know, tempted to be emotionally involved with this other person when they have determined to pursue someone else. So it's kind of was, if you step back and look at it, it's like a glimpse into, I don't want to say cautionary tale because it wasn't a cautionary tale, but it's like a glimpse into you know, the workings of our mind and the ways that we justify certain behaviors and do certain things or whatever. So you could look at it both ways. I know some people would probably just be disgusted by the characters throughout the whole story, and other people will just take it on the surface as a story. And, you know, your mileage might vary on that one. I think that I ended up giving it 3 or 3.5 stars. I'm not sure. I had wanted to read a couple of other books, and I didn't get to either of them for that prompt. And then there were prompts for watching adaptations. One was to watch a period adaptation, and one was to watch a modern adaptation. I did not watch a modern adaptation. I didn't have time for that. But we did watch the 1980 something or other version of Mansfield Park, which made me feel kind of old because I was like, this video quality is horrific. I was like, is this really what TV looked like when I was a kid? Like, I don't remember it being that bad. I think also it was usually on much smaller TVs back then. But anyways, Mansfield Park, I thought overall it was a pretty good production. I've not seen any others to compare it with. And besides the poor video quality, some of the characters I felt were maybe overacted. But I felt like they did a good job of sticking to Austen's story and portraying it as the way that she intended it to be portrayed, and showing the characters as they were in her story. So that was good. So that was my Jane Austen July. For Chantel's Read Your Shelf Challenge, I was supposed to read a collection of short stories, and I read Flower Fables for that. So I did manage to be successful with that. So like I said, in this past week and a half, I have managed to salvage my July reading, because up until that point, I was like, I am not reading anything that I intended to read. but I managed to pull it all together and actually finish more or less successfully. And for the summer book bingo that Tiffany at Beautiful Minutia is hosting, let's see, what's a good way to put this up here? Okay, so I have made great progress in July, actually, more than I expected. Now, a lot of these prompts didn't end up being the books that I thought they would be. All of that's gotten kind of like messed up. And it's also messed up my August one because it doesn't matter though. I'm reading the books and I'm filling off the prompts. So the ones that I added in July, just most recently, Les Miserables by Victor Hugo, I put in the second chance spot, which gave me much closer to a bingo here. I'll talk about that in a second. I put it on here as second chance because Jean Valjean, the main character of Les Miserables, gets a second chance at life when he meets the bishop. And then Jane Austen at Home filled in this spot for places that I would like to visit because I have visited her home in Chawton, but I would love to visit any of Jane Austen's homes that she lived in or any of the places that were mentioned in that book. So that fits for that one. Emma M. Lyon Volume 3, I was able to fill in for books in a series. I read that in July also. And a hot cover, Love and the Silver Lining by Tammy L. Gray, I read it towards the beginning of July, so I filled that one in. And let's see, for a library book, I just finished How to Taste Coffee by Jessica Easto, so that finishes up that prompt for me. And let's see, some of these I'm like, did I read it in July or when did I read this book? Okay. And then over 500 pages, I finished The Heir of Redcliffe, which was, well, much more than 500 pages, I'm pretty sure. And then, let's see, what else? Oh, Flower Fables by, okay, so this is what I need to, one that changed. Flower Fables by Louisa May Alcott, I was intending to put in the short story slot. But I realized as I'm getting closer to the end of this chart, or the end of this bingo card, I realized that I didn't really have anything for nature that fit well. I was going to put the 5 Little Peppers that I plan to read in August, but I felt like the Flower Fables much better fit this prompt than that. And it's there is a great deal of beautiful nature description in that book. There's a lot of discussion of flowers and bodies of water and the sky and etc. So it was really a perfect fit for that prompt. So even though it was also a short story collection, I decided to put that in the nature. For Keep Putting Off, I put Frankenstein by Mary Shelley on there because I put that off. That was on a couple TBRs before I finally actually read that one. And so that gave me a whole bingo here on this side. So now I have a bingo this way and a bingo this way, a bingo across the top. And I just have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 prompts that I need to fill for the month of August. And that is totally going to be doable. For the Beaches and Books Readathon, hosted by a bunch of wonderful channels on BookTube, which I will put in the description box. I did, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 out of 12, which is not too bad. The 2 that I did not get were a book about sports, which was not a huge surprise to me, and a book that made waves in the community, which I'm a little bit sad about because I wanted to read for a lifetime. That was another one that was, this is the second month that I spent on my TBR, and I just haven't gotten to it. I really want to read for a lifetime by Gabrielle Meyer, the 3rd book in this series, before the next book in this series comes out. And that was going to be my choice for a book that made waves in the community, but I didn't get to it. That's okay, I will get to it eventually, but as a result, I only had 10 books for this. So the ones that I did get for this, go to the library and pick a book. That's literally what happened with How to Taste Coffee. I was at the library and I was like, oh, that looks interesting. Oh, pick it up. And then a book that you saved for later, and that is Emma M. Lyon, Volume 3, because immediately after I read Volumes 1 and 2, which I borrowed from my sister, I wanted to read Volume 3, but I did intentionally save it for later for a couple reasons. One, I had other stuff that I wanted to read that I needed to read for challenges or whatever, but 2, because Volumes 1 and 2 were so much fun, I wanted to save that for another month to have that same kind of, reading experience. So I'm glad that I did save it for later. And then a book that you think will be 5 stars was Born of Gilded Mountains, and it definitely was 5 stars. I talked at length about that. That one also fit the prompt for a book about friends because it is a story of friendship between 2 pen pals. And it's a beautiful story of their friendship. And then also a book with 2 points of view. It fits for that because each of the friends, their point of view is shared in this book. So then the other prompts, the Heir of Redcliffe, I put for an underwater setting, which actually the Flower Fables could also go in that spot. Because in the Flower Fables, there is a short story that actually a good deal of the story takes place underwater. So, but I had read this one before and I already filled it off in this prompt and whatever. But that one also would work for this. But in the Heir of Redcliffe, there is a very important and pivotal scene in the story that takes place on the ocean off the coast of the Redcliffe property. And it involves people drowning and a shipwreck and all of this stuff. So that one I also put there in that prompt. Then a book with the sun or yellow cover, Love in the Silver Lining, has a like a sunrise or sunset on the front cover. A book with royalty or castle, I put the Heir of Redcliffe because the Redcliffe property is a huge property in England. Well, I mean, it's an imaginary property, but it has the whole castle idea working there. The book that I read during a rainstorm was Jane Austen at Home. And then a book set in a beach town was Sanditon, which was one of the ones on this that I actually intended to read for the prompt and actually did. The rest of them, I think I changed my mind as as I went through the month, which happens. So overall, July ended up very well. I read a total of, I think, 10 books. Emma and Lion, Volume 3, I gave 5 stars. Enjoyed it just as much as the first 2. Love in the Silver Lining, I also gave 5 stars with some caveats. Amanda Dyke's Born of Gilded Mountains, 5 stars, amazing book, loved it. The Heir of Redcliffe, I gave 3.5 stars. It was good, but it was just really long and a little bit too much on the moralistic, preachy side of Victorian fiction for me. And then Jane Austen at Home by Lucy Worsley, I gave 3 stars to. It was a biography of Jane Austen. Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, I gave 4 stars. Really enjoyed that read. Sanditon by Jane Austen, 5 stars. And Flower Fables by Louisa May Alcott, I gave 4 stars. Les Miserables, I ended up giving it 5 stars, even though I wasn't sure about that most of the way through the book. And then How to Taste Coffee, I also gave 4 stars. And then I forgot to put on here The Earl Next Door by Ashton Newbold, but I would give that 3 stars. So actually that's 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 books in July, which is actually really good. And some of them were short. Like Emma Emmeline is not very long. Sanditon was not really a full book. Flower Fables was really short. And How to Taste Coffee wasn't that long. So some of them were really short. Otherwise I would not have been able to get that many read. And Les Miserables and The Heir of Redcliffe, I had previously started. It was a matter of finishing them. Speaking of which, another challenge that I'm working on is the big book summer. And so I finished 2 books for that, The Heir of Redcliffe and Les Miserables. So well done as far as that goes. And I also was able to mark off some of my list, my goals for my more long-term goals. I was able to mark off Sanditon on my rereads of all things Jane Austen. The only one I have left is Lady Susan. And you can see I'm making great progress on my year. I'm ahead for the whole year because I put 100 books on here and I have I think close to 70 read. And then I was able to cross off new releases that I wanted to read this year. Born of Gilded Mountains. Still have For a Lifetime on that list. And then I added 2 to my nonfiction reads of 2024. Jane Austen at Home and How to Taste Coffee. So that's a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 nonfiction reads in 2024. And if I had a goal, it was 12. So that's pretty good. I added to my 5-star reads. In fact, I had to make a new page. So Born of Gilded Mountains was a 5-star read. I had some solid 5-star reads in July. Born of Gilded Mountains, and then also Sanditon and Les Miserables. So now I have 2 pages of 5-star reads, which is good. And only 1 page of DNS. So that's a good balance, I think. Also, for the books that I want to reread, and these I do want to reread this year. So I'm almost halfway through. That's pretty good, but I do have, these are not as long as some of those, so, and some of them will be easier reads, but I was also able to mark Les Mis finally off of that list. Overall, in my favorite book of the year bracket here, what has made it to July's favorite book is Born of Gilded Mountains, and that will go up against the book my favorite book of August, so we'll see what wins out there. And then in all the Alcott I want to read, I was able to mark off Flower Fables on that list. So that's one more read by her. So that is all that I have for wrapping up the month of July. Ended up being a fantastic month, reading maybe not what I intended to read, but getting some fantastic reads in and managing to mark off most of the specific goals that I wanted to accomplish in July. So all in all, I can't complain. I'm pretty happy about that. So yeah, here's to August, and I hope that August will be a fantastic year, a fantastic month of reading, both for you and for me. Let me know in the comments how you did on your July reading goals. Did your July turn out as you wanted it to in terms of reading? Or did you have some twists and turns kind of like I did? Just let me know in the comments. Let me know your thoughts about any of the books that I read or my thoughts on them. Let's keep the conversation going, and I will talk to you next time. Bye. Hello, and thank you for watching all the way to the end of my weekly reading wrap up. I hope that you had enjoyed it, and I have a special gift that I would like to give to one of you. I pre-ordered a book earlier this year, and then, like the old woman that I am, I forgot that I pre-ordered it, and I pre-ordered it again. So I received 2 copies of this book, and I would love to gift one of them to one of you. And that is Born of Gilded Mountains by Amanda Dykes, which quickly became my favorite book of the year so far, up through July. So I would love to give this to one of you. If you are interested in receiving my extra copy of this book, please just leave a comment below specifying whether or not you have ever read any books by Amanda Dykes. That's it. I will choose from among those specific comments, and I will be announcing next week in my weekly reading wrap up who the winner is. And then if you will just send me your mailing address and we can connect, and I will send this to you. So unfortunately, this is only available in the United States because I will be actually mailing this. So due to costs, it will only be in the United States. So please, if you are in the United States and are willing to give me your address, I will send you a copy of this book, choosing one person from among the comments to review. If you are living in the United States and are willing to send me your address and you would like to receive a copy of this book, please leave a comment specifying whether or not you have read a book by Amanda Dykes, and I will choose from among those comments and send that recipient this book. See you next week.